Hey everybody, and welcome to the next episode of UXPRESS podcast. You may be wondering why I'm talking in English, and the short answer is because this is a special episode, and today my guest won't be a Bulgarian folk. It will be somebody from the global scene. So yeah, this is one thing that will happen every time we have reached the last episode. The name of my special guest is Sophia Prater. She is the founder of OOUX, where she created a framework called ORCA, pioneering a structured way for designers and teams to tackle complex digital problems. She graduated in industrial design, which laid the foundation for her, I would say, unique perspective on structure, clarity, and system thinking. Sophia has over a decade of experience. She worked across major companies including CNN, Delta Airlines, and the Weather Channel, shaping large-scale digital products. Aside from that, she is also educator and mentor, leading the OUX certification program and coaching designers globally, building a strong learning community around her framework. Sophia is also a public figure and thought leader, attending regularly at international conferences. She is widely recognized for her engaging and approachable style for teaching complex concepts. As personality, Sophia is very curiosity-driven. She has a knack of combining creativity with analytical thinking. In our industry, Sophia is known for her mission to eliminate ambiguity, break silos, and align teams around shared understanding. Her approach might change how you approach design. In that regard, let's move on to the episode. Okay, I think we are live. First off, I'm super excited and thankful that the actual creator of the OOUX framework is on my show. Sophia, thank you so much for joining me. It is really awesome to have the chance to get to know you. Really.
Thanks for letting me be here. It's awesome that you think it's awesome that I'm here. Let's talk OUX.
I just wanted to point out one thing. This is the very first special episode of UXPRESS. So I don't know if I've told you that. So basically, every season, I'm going to have a special episode with a global leader in our field. So this is the whole idea because I want to help people. You, yeah, exactly, you. I just want to make it easy for Bulgarian people and Bulgarian UX specialists to learn from the global leaders and to give them an additional channel where they can have this information and learning curve, not curve, just learning. Okay, so shall we start? You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's go. Okay, so I have a few intro questions for you. Can you tell me 5 interesting facts about yourself?
Ooh, 5. Okay, I can do 5. I can do 5. I think. All right. So right at the top of my head, I love skiing. It's like the one sport that I do, and that I'm obsessed with it. So I love skiing. My other sport/hobby is trailblazing. So I have 5 acres and deer go through, like I live in the forest basically. So the deer create these trails, but the trails are not a good user experience. So you have to go in, you have to clear the trails and sort of like pick out which trails. So I go and I organize my forest, which is so fun. It's like I can be out there all day. Another fun fact is I have not done that in a really long time. I've barely even taken a walk in the last 3 weeks. I am in the middle of re-recording our OUX masterclass. So it is the 22-hour course that I recorded for the first time in 2021. And I'm re-recording it with the whole team this time, instead of doing it out of my basement, out of my little like Harry Potter closet underneath the stairs. We have like a set now, and it's just so much more professional. But
nice.
It is happening alongside cohort 11, so I have a lot of deadlines that I'm hitting. So I was up until 2 o'clock in the morning editing video last night. I am still putting my hands on every single video. So I am doing some editing as well. Okay, so that's 3. Another interesting fact about me is my nephew and his fiance came from Poland last week. So I had not seen him in 9 years. This is
9 years. Wow.
yeah, since before COVID. So COVID like just puts a blip in everything, right? So that's the longest we've ever gone.
Indeed.
He's, I think, just turned 30, so he's like an actual adult now, and is Polish. So half of my family is Polish,
Okay.
and got to meet his fiance for the first time, and she's just lovely, and we're already best friends. So that was just a really beautiful thing for them to be here for a week,
Getting family together.
and yes, getting the family together and it's like meeting a new member of the family, which is very cool. So, and then another fun fact about me is I really love, what do I really love? This isn't that fun, but it's the last one I can think of, which is I really love cats. I'm a cat lover. I'm an animal lover overall. I am a cat person. I have two cats. I do not have kids. I am child free by choice, but yes, but my husband and I are pretty obsessed with our cats. It's pretty
Well, I'm
ridiculous.
I'm a dog person, but what I can say is that I also love cats. I have a dog. This is why I'm saying that I'm
Yes.
a dog person. But having, some kind of a pet is always much fun. It,
Yeah, and so you don't discriminate against cats. A lot of dog people discriminate against cats. Cat people don't usually discriminate against dogs, but dog people are like, cats.
just because they tend to go everywhere, and the dog people usually don't want their stuff to be touched constantly by cats and dropped and all of that. Probably this is the reason. I don't know. I don't know. I'm presuming.
I feel like cats are way more chill. Dogs are the ones that are like licking your leg all the time or like slobbering on things. Sure, my kitty cat, she's just curled up over there, just right at my she's the shy kitty of the family, but she loves me and she's my little shadow. She follows me around. It's really sweet.
Well, what I can say is that your five interesting facts really are amazing. So the one that you're living in the forest probably sounds so amazing. I mean,
Oh,
to
yeah.
be there, this is like my dream. That in the future I'm not in the big city and I go in a silent mode and have
Yes.
the nature. It's just
Silent mode is right. Like that was actually, so we did a COVID move in 2020. Like months into COVID, we were right in the heart of Atlanta, like reach out and touch your neighbor's house. And it just got like all of a sudden just felt really crowded. And my husband ended up joining my company, so we became
hmm,
completely location independent. I was already location independent. I'd had my business since 2014, but he was not. And then he ended up leaving electrical engineering to join my company in 2020 because in 2020 nobody could judge you for anything. It was like
oh yeah,
everybody's just doing their thing. So the
everybody was
thing that
surviving.
like everybody was surviving, and then you could do things that like didn't make sense, like quit your successful electrical engineering job to join your wife's internet company. Like, what are you doing? But nobody questioned it during COVID. So it was one of those cool opportunities that might not have happened without COVID. But then we were
Yeah.
fully location independent, but also down in income. So this was a move of like, it was actually way cheaper out here than in the middle of Atlanta.
Hmm.
So we were able to trade our like city view for a mountain view, and then picked up some additional land as kind of like land became available. We sort of just expanded our dominion. But yeah, we have a forest. We have our own forest. It's cool.
Well, as I said, this is just a super nice thing, and in the future, the funny thing here in Bulgaria is that not many people have this willingness to go to the forest. It's more like people are living in the cities. Although we have countryside, but it's not the same as in the US. The next question I want to ask you is: do you have a UX idol? So, who is your inspiration in our field?
Ooh, okay. So there's a few
Hmm.
folks. Like I'll give them like basically like the books that they've written, and also that like the people that they are as well. But I will say Kathy Sierra. I've not met her, but she has a book called Badass: Making Users Awesome. That it is like probably the book that I recommend the most. Have you read it?
Uh, I I think
You
no.
don't know.
I
It's
think
called It's either Badass Making Users Awesome or Making Users Awesome. Anyway, Kathy Sierra, it's such a fun read. It's just like, it's like a comic book, but it's really, I recommend it to non-UX designers too, because it's about how people learn. So as somebody who is not only a UX designer, but I am in education as well, teaching UX designers, it's just like, how do you make your users badass, right? So like, how do you make it's not about making a badass product, it's like, yes, you make a badass product, but you're making a badass product to make your users badass. So like the idea that people don't want to be good at a camera, they want to be a good photographer. So your camera is not to make the best camera possible. The goal is to make the best photographer possible. And how can your camera sort of serve that? So it's a bit of a mindset shift. So I love that book. It's really just about up-leveling humanity, right? That's what we're trying to do here. Not necessarily make good products. Yeah. We make good products in service of that, and we can get away from that. We can think about it as we get very like myopic thinking about just our product. No, at the end of the day, we're trying to make good photographers, not just good cameras. So love that one. And then Andrew Hinton, love calling out Andrew Hinton, my UX designer, mentor, philosopher. He wrote the book Understanding Context by O'Reilly, the O'Reilly publishers. It's a book that you'll need to read 3 times cover to cover to start like really letting it sink in. It's a great book. And then I'll point to Mike Atherton and Carrie Hain, who wrote Designing Connected Content, which is like almost the OOUX book. It's like almost the book that I would have written, but it's very, very good from a content perspective.
Okay. So this is a very good resources that people should definitely, check. For sure, I will do so. So now I want to ask you, how did your journey in UX start?
So
give me the short version, or it's up to you which version you prefer.
I'll try to give the short version. It's by accident. I'm sure you get that a lot. But I was in industrial design, so I knew I wanted to do creative problem solving. So I was an industrial designer. I was an industrial designer for about a year after graduating with industrial design degree. And then that was 2008. And it was really hard to get a job. And I happened upon meeting a recruiter at Accenture. And this was back in 2008. It was 2008. Yep. I was living in my parents' basement, had to move back in with them. And then I met this recruiter at Accenture at a party. And she was like, I think I have the perfect thing for you. Because I was talking to her about what I enjoyed. I was talking to her about the aspects of industrial design that I enjoyed, which was all about how people use the thing, not necessarily what it looks like.
This is when it clicked.
Yeah. And so she had a role for a UE analyst, so user experience. It was still called UE back then. We hadn't settled on the UX term. And I read the job description and I was like, whoa, this is like even better than the jobs I was applying for in industrial design. This is like what I'm made for. And so I applied and I ended up getting the job. That was 2008. So it was like just like the perfect time to get into UX, really, like right on the cusp of the iPhone and the iPad about to come out. So that's how I got into it.
Okay. And so you've been enjoying it ever since, from what I know.
But not so much. The first 5 years were pretty rough. I would say there was bright spots, but there was a lot of coming home crying. There was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of wondering if I should be doing UX design at all, if this was right for me. I thought I was going to be collaboratively solving problems and making the world a better place, and then I got put on real projects, and I was not expected to really understand anything that I was actually designing. I was just dropped into a bunch of complexity, and I was expected to just UX it, just add your little UX fairy dust on top and make it nicer and make it prettier, kind of, but like add some white space or turn these drop downs into checkboxes or vice versa or something like that. So it's all very surface level. The collaboration, I was like, we weren't really communicating with each other very well. So my kind of dream and picture of what UX could be I was constantly disappointed. So I worked at 5 different places in the first 5 years. I quit my job 5 times, trying to like so I worked at Accenture for a year. Then I worked at 2 other small agencies. I worked at CNN, and then I worked in another 2 agencies. Wait, six places maybe, I don't know, I've lose count.
It makes sense.
So I was like, this can't be how it's done. This is so messed up. What are we doing here? This doesn't make any sense at all. And that's where OOUX came from, was just a lot of frustration.
Yeah, you pretty much answered my next question, which is how the concept was born. But yeah, what I can tell is that probably during this period of time, UX in general was still forming as a thing, you know.
Yeah.
There are many things that were unclear. Yeah, already people knew UX methods and how to deal with the job, but there wasn't so much resources available, probably. I don't know, you can tell me, because I am, you know, a bit later down the road. So it's good that eventually, you know, you found exactly what you're good at, which is the OOUX framework, and you pretty much inspired so many people with it. So now we want to talk about OOUX and ORCA, which is the framework. So what I can say is that from what I know, OOUX is a philosophy, while ORCA is more like the actual framework, correct?
Right, yeah. And I'll go back and just say, like, one quick note that yes, we've come a long way since I was like crying on the subway coming home, because it was just like, what are we even doing here? And nobody understood UX because it was very early days. People actually understand a version of UX, but I think that still UX is misunderstood. I think still UX designers are very frustrated, and a lot of the stuff that was frustrating me back in 2010, it's crazy how much people are still frustrated by the same things. Pointless rework, right? Because requirements changing under your feet, scope changes under your feet, expected to do service level design, not getting a seat at the strategy table, getting things later on, like all these things are still actually happening. So, but to answer your question, yeah, so object-oriented UX, OOUX, is this kind of philosophy, just that the fact that people think in objects, and this is based in cognitive science, this is based in evolutionary science, how the brain actually works, is when we go to understand anything, whether that is a physical or a digital environment, to understand how we operate in that environment, to understand what's going on, to even feel safe in that environment, we really need to understand the things in that environment. So you walk into a room that you've never been in before, in the back of your brain, your visual cortex, whether you are sighted or not, your visual cortex is still active. You're going to use inputs from your senses, and you're going to use it from pattern recognition and basically how we have evolved in the 3-dimensional world to survive. You're going to say, what are the things here? How do all these things relate to each other, and how do they relate to me? What's mine? What's not mine? What's yours? Does this chair go with that table, or does this chair go with this table? Is that a chair that I can sit in, or is that a chair that the facilitator sits in? Like, we're asking all these questions about relationships between things, very tacitly, back of the mind. It's just doing it automatically based on gestalt, if you will, based on pattern recognition and looking at the things and the proximity of those things. We're trying to parse out relationships. We're also trying to figure out what we can do to these different things. Can I sit in that chair? Can I sit in that chair? Is that like a handout that I'm supposed to grab because I'm walking into this workshop? What do I do with these sticky notes? We're trying to figure out what actions we can take on certain things. And we also want to know the basic attributes of those things. Okay, so we can actually define the things and figure out what they are. So this is just what the brain is doing, whether it's entering a physical or a digital environment. So OOUX is just saying, all right, people think in objects. So because people think in objects, let's make sure that we get clear on our objects as a team. We have really good names for these concepts, if you will. We get clear within our team so that then we can create software, we can create experiences, that those things are really, really clear to the end user. So that's all it's saying. That's all it's saying, right? It's a hard thing to argue with, actually. If you like,
you cannot argue with it. I mean, it's super.
Oh, people can, they
Really?
they will. But it's based in science, right? It's based on how we perceive the world.
Yeah, I mean, this is a framework, while the other one is the real life story. So but they're
Yeah.
super the same. So I don't know how people can argue with that. I mean,
People
this is
will
science.
argue with like the object oriented. They think it's like based in object oriented programming. So
Ah,
there's a lot of like surface level stuff of like, oh, they look at it and they're like, oh, why would we do that? And also, I mean, even though functional programming, extreme programming, these new programming methodologies, they are still object oriented. There's like, oh, we're moving away from OO. Like, not really, because if it's in a database, if you have
it's
databases
object.
and databases that talk to each other, then like you have to understand data and how data attaches to things and how data flows from one object to another
Yeah.
object. Like,
Yeah.
you're still using some sort of like, it's still based in OO principles. But
Hmm.
regardless, like we do this because this is how humans think, not because this is how developers think. The bonus is developers are thinking like this too. So it's going to help you communicate with your developers, even if they're using something like functional programming or
Whatever.
the newfangled thing, whatever the newfangled thing is. It's like moving away from traditional OO. So that's a little bit of the pushback that I get there. I get pushback on, well, this isn't agile. This feels more like big design up front because it's big picture design. So that's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation. But yeah,
Yeah.
I get a whole laundry list of pushback, but I've got all the there's always it's usually based on a misunderstanding of what actually OOUX is. So really all it is it's like we think in objects, we got to understand the objects to get things done. Also, objects are really the basis of understanding. So we see this in child psychology too. So I always ask people like when if you have kids, do you remember their first words? Do you remember like kind of teaching them language basically? And even in languages that are more verb focused, like a lot of excuse me, a lot of indigenous languages are verb focused, at least here in North America. But even then, kids learn nouns first. So nouns are just easier
Definitely.
than verbs. Concepts are easier than procedures. So we want to have really strong nouns to serve those procedures. So it's not that procedures aren't important. It's not that tasks aren't important. Like, I actually think that they're more important. People usually in our software, people need to get stuff done. But in service of that getting done, if we can have really, really clear objects to as the foundation for that interaction design, it's going to make the getting done so much easier if people understand what they're actually dealing with.
Definitely. Definitely. And how does OUX handles complexity?
So because we think in objects,
Yeah.
breaking down a complex system by object is going to feel so much better, so much easier than trying to break down a complex system by verbs or by flows or by features. So once we have these really clear dividing lines, because we have these discrete objects and of course relationships between those objects, but once we can have discrete objects, then we can label those, right? So like best thing is just using the same word for the same thing and not different words for different things. So like often what we do is we use a lot of different words for the same things. We have a lot of synonyms floating around, and you call it an appointment, I call it a visit. And so, but we're really talking about the same thing, or we use the same word for a lot of different things. So you're calling appointment something, and my word for appointment actually means something else. And if we're designing complex medical software amongst ourselves, like this is bad, right? So just having a shared language around the nouns is amazing, because it's usually when people are confused by something, and just you can kind of watch this happening if like you're listening to a business stakeholder and they're talking about a bunch of business rules, and it's like business babble, and you kind of are like, oh gosh, I'm so lost, what are you even talking about? You're likely lost because of a lack of understanding of the objects, not the verbs. Usually the verbs are kind of common. Like we use a lot fewer verbs, and it's doing the same. The terms for the verbs, it's like those. Usually we understand those. Oh, you copy the thing, you add to the thing, you create a thing, you merge things. Like I know what merge means, but like what is an appointment really in this system, or what is a commitment in this system, or what is a server in this system, whatever the things are that you're working with, to be able to really define those things. That's usually where the confusion is coming from. So the quick hot tip here is, as you are looking at an email or a presentation, or you're just listening to somebody talk and you're finding yourself getting lost, really look for the nouns especially that you do not have a good definition for. And if you can just, it's probably like 2 to 3 nouns that you're just like, oh, I'm not actually sure. I'm not fully clear on what that thing is. And once you get clear on what those things are, and you get a really good picture of those things and even the relationships between those things, all of a sudden what the person is saying makes a whole lot more sense.
What I can say is I can give a personal story on that. After learning about OUX, what I did is, during those meetings, those stakeholder meetings, as you said, the business terms are so many, and everybody's saying so many things that you don't understand at the very first sight. And I started to ask directly, exactly as you said, the objects. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? And because what I've seen is that, for example, if you're not communicating with only one person, let's say we have 3 individuals into that stakeholder interview, and they use this, for the same object, they use different words, and you have to, accommodate that in a way. So this is one of the first things I do. I'm trying to understand what are the objects, what are they talking about. So later on, it becomes super easier for me to, get onboarded with the whole project's vision. And
yes, onboarding is huge. Like having a and then also like if you're the one that creates that glossary of things, and when you create a glossary, another hot tip is don't just do the definition, but also do instances. So example instances are really, really important. So if the object is an event, okay, so you have an event object and you have a definition of that. Okay, this is a thing that happens at a date and a time where blah, blah, for this particular purpose, and then actually give some example instances. So, soccer practice at 3 p.m. in this particular app, or school drop off at 8 a.m. Those could be events within a co-parenting calendar app, which is something that I'm working on in the cohort right now. So it's front of mind. But these things like, what do we call, what is a rotation in this application? Okay, let's define a rotation, and let's also give some instances of that rotation. So a rotation is a set of time that reoccurs, that basically commitments are put underneath that rotation. And an instance would be mom's week or dad's week. Okay, now I'm starting to understand what a rotation is, this sort of abstract object. And that's another pushback that I get is like, oh, the objects in my domain are so abstract, this could never work. And my refuting that is like, the more abstract your objects are, the more you need this, right? Like the more you need to define the things, because it's going to be confusing to people, because people can get concrete objects, and when you think of kids, concrete objects come first, and then the more abstract objects come later on. Abstract objects are harder, so the more that we can concretize them, the better. So did I answer your question? I forgot what the question was.
Oh, complexity. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you did. I mean, at least I feel at least I feel that way. So
you feel complete with my answer.
For sure. Okay. So what's the single biggest difference it made for a project that you've seen when it comes to using OUX? Do you have a story?
Yes, I have so many stories, but I'll give the original one. Okay. The original first time would be with CNN election results, and that's when I was just starting to do this, and it's just such a good story of such a stark example of also what not to do. And there's some other good lessons in here. But I got brought on to do CNN election results in 2012. I was working at CNN, and it was June, and they realized, we want to do a responsive design. So the screens from 2008 aren't going to quite work. So we were just going to use the screens from 2008, but now the powers that be are we're going to do responsive. So, hey, Sophia, come over here. We're starting development on Monday, and now it's Thursday right now. So we just need this. They're starting with the state detail screen, like Georgia, California, Ohio. We're starting with the state detail screen. That sprint starts on Monday. So we just need the wireframes for the state detail, right? We need the mobile, tablet, and desktop version. So it's really just 3 wireframes that we need. And here's what it looked like in 2008. So just look at the state detail and just responsify it so that it can go on all the different screens. That's not too much to ask. I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah, for them it's not.
For them it's not. But what I realized, and something in my head clicked in that moment that was if I am designing this cog in the machine without thinking about the whole machine, when I go to the next cog in the machine, I'm going to want to change things about the first cog. So if we go ahead and I say, here's the state detail screen, and then I move on to the race detail screen, like Senate, President, see how I'm giving you instances of the object to help you understand what the object is. So if I move on to now the race detail, I'm going to look back at the state detail and I'm going to likely be like, ooh, because they're connected. They're connected. So instead of doing just the state detail screen, I basically built a system model. I built like the kind of the very beginning of what would be like a system model / what we call an OUX, a nav flow that shows how all of these objects and the objects nested inside could provide navigation. The other thing that really spawned this on is when I looked at the existing screens from 2008, the non-responsive design screens, I noticed that the navigation, like the top bar navigation, was really the only way to navigate. So like you had to use that navigation to get anywhere within the system because the content was not navigable. There was not really objects. It was just you had to use that top bar. And I knew that at least in 2008, what was this? 2012. In 2012, we had good data that was showing like 60% of our users wouldn't hit the hamburger. We have older users as well on CNN. So even on a mobile device, they would see the little hamburger icon and they wouldn't even look to click on it. And that happens even today. There's a good, I don't know the statistics for today, but I am sure there's still like, yeah, but even it's 20% of users that just kind of like are blind to the hamburger, that they don't think, so they're just looking at the content. They don't think to tap in there to see. So we hide all of our navigation away. And I was thinking, how are people going to navigate this? Because on a mobile device, all this navigation is going to get hamburgered away. There's no way I can show these 8 little things across the bar. So how can the content be the navigation?
Right.
And a lot of people in the content modeling world and in content strategy were already thinking about this. I did not have any contact with them, though, until I read another one would be Sarah Watcher Boetcher. I always get her last name wrong. Sarah WB, and her great book, Content Everywhere, that she wrote in 2013. She was writing this book as I was struggling with this stuff, on how your content can be your navigation. So that was the other thing. And that project was a success, and that's where it all started. And then I was just like, more and more of this, more and more of this. How do and the stories that I get now from people that go through the program is they have this like wonderful, awful moment where they look back at the work that they did the year before. And they're like, oh man, like if I had only had OUX, like this would have been so much easier. This would have been so much better. And that's one of my favorite testimonials of the process, is that like you grow so much when you learn this as a systems designer, as somebody who can think in connections and think in multi-level connections. We're teaching in the program right now, we're teaching proxy relationships. So not just how does this thing relate to this thing, but how does this thing relate indirectly to these other things? And do we want to surface that or not? Like you start playing 4D chess, and when you're playing 4D chess, you look back on your previous work and you're like, man, wish I had this. Or like another one is like, I'm working on a project right now and I have no idea how I would be doing this without OUX. And that's how I'm so far away from doing it any other way now, that when I have a project, it has any modicum of complexity, I'm just like, I don't even know what I would do. What I would go about this.
Well, you've become the master of it. I mean, it is so with you, so it's super normal. But yeah, the whole concept that not only the navigation is your way to navigate, and content should be also considered very, very, very importantly as an option B, even sometimes option A, if I have to be honest. It really depends. I mean, always give the user more than one way to go to a given place. Why should there be only one way? So right. Yeah.
And I would flip it, and I often say that the main navigation, like the persistent navigation, is your fire escape. There is nothing intuitive about now. We need it to be like, okay, let me start over at some sort of landing or list page, but to actually get to detail pages, which is usually what we're trying to get to. Like it's like the list pages and the landing page are just means to an end. Usually we're trying to get to some sort of instance of an object, some sort of detail page. Yeah. And this goes for content heavy sites. This also goes for highly interactive products. You're trying to get to the instance of a thing. And the best way to get there, the most intuitive way to get there, is going to be through the relationships. this is how the brain works. Like if you literally look at a picture of the brain, what do you see? If you get really close in, you see nodes and you see connections between those nodes. This is how memory works. This is how nature works. There's something so natural about how we navigate through connected things. This is how, if I say a word, you're going to think of another word, you're going to have some sort of word association. It's probably because of some sort of relationship that those things have. So this is just how the brain works. We have been trained to click on the things across the top, but that is a human creation, right? That is not divine creation. This is how actually things are connected through their relationship. So if we can allow that navigation to happen, I've been calling these the desire paths. So there's this great way of doing park design, basically. They've been doing this on college campuses where you build all the buildings and then you give it a lawn. And then you just wait for the paths to emerge. You just let people trudge through the mud for a couple months, and then they will show you exactly where they want the paths to go, and then you pave those. Yeah. And so you get, and that is kind of what we're doing here, is we're like, let the natural paths emerge. How do people just think about these things? How do they naturally connect? And then facilitate that, instead of like some sort of top-down hierarchical navigation that, yeah, we can have that, but that's a backup.
For sure. Okay, so let's now shift to we have already spoken about ORCA, but we haven't used the term. So for someone new to it, can you briefly describe why it's ORCA first?
Yes.
And also, what designers notice first time when they try it, from your experience from workshops?
Yeah, for sure. So ORCA stands for Objects, Relationships, Calls to Action, and Attributes. And I was mentioning those questions that people ask when they enter an environment. And those questions that like the back of their brain is asking and is going to start like grinding to a halt if it cannot easily answer is, what are the things in this environment? How do the things connect with each other? How are they all related? How are they related to me? What can I do to these things? What permissions do I have on these things? So we get straight into permissions really early. So as a facilitator, what do I have? Or as a student, or as a teacher, or as the principal, like what do I have as a parent versus a child? What do I have permissions to do to these things within this environment? What does it take to do those things? And then what are their attributes? What is their structural makeup? What is the status of these things? Okay. Is this chair occupied or unoccupied? Is this chair go with this table or another table? So this is what our brain is doing. And so what we want to do is we want to ORCA. We want to get our objects really clear. That 9 out of 10 times, that's basically has to happen first in my book. Get as clear as you possibly can on the objects. Map the relationships. We use cardinality and OOUX to map the relationships. So this thing has 0 to many of this thing, has 0 to 1 of this thing, 1 to many, etc. So we get clear on the cardinality. Then we go into what's called a CTA matrix. So we start looking at the roles. So who are our roles that are in scope in this system? Who do we need to when it comes to permissions, are we designing the teacher and the student and the parent and the principal roles, because they could probably do different things to the objects within the system. So you've got roles down the y-axis, your objects across the x-axis, and you basically do a functionality audit. What do these different roles do to these different things? And then we go into the A of ORCA, which is where we do our full-blown object map, where we separate core content and metadata. So often that kind of gets squished together. And we can get into the weeds of the difference between core content and metadata, but basically we get all the attributes and we list all the attributes for the thing. So a rotation has days of the week associated with it. It has a description, it has a title, it maybe has like a color associated with it too, so that we can see different rotations and different color coding. So we figured out all the attributes, and then we iterate on that. So we go through the first round as a discovery round where we get all the questions. We basically get more questions than answers during a discovery round. This is a great tool for coming up with questions and exposing the unknown unknowns. Like I call it, like stealing questions from the future that you're like, it's gonna bite you in the butt later, but like, can you get it early on? And then we go through a requirements round where we do a lot of documentation. We ask even more questions. Then we prioritize. So you can actually prioritize your O's, your R's, your C's, and your A's and build a roadmap based on this. And then we get into our presentation where we actually start building screens around our O's, R's, and C's and A's. And the screens really nicely just kind of almost design themselves once you've done all this work.
Okay, I think we have a very solid now understanding of what is ORCA for everybody who have never heard it, just because I mean, OUX is a bit more known term right now. So thank you for that. Now I want to focus you on one tradition that we have in UXPRESS. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but here each guest leaves a question for the next one to answer.
Ooh.
My previous guest is a well-known UX designer from Bulgaria. I gave him a bit of brief on what topics we're going to discuss today, and what he has for you is the following. So tell me, how do you integrate AI into your daily work with the ORCA process, and which examples do you find most effective?
Wonderful. Okay, very cool. So I will get right down to brass tacks for this one. There's so many cool ways to integrate AI. One thing that we try to do with OUX is we put AI in its place. Okay? AI is not the goal. The goal is not to release the new AI feature. The goal is to figure out how can AI empower our system, right? So recently I was building some new curriculum for actually taking OUX to the business level and thinking about business, like high level business objects that don't necessarily show up in your software, things like initiatives, strategic pillars, super outcomes, and how do those things relate to each other? So you can actually OUX the business. It's a beautiful thing, very fun. And one of the questions that came up was like, okay, so my organization has a strategic pillar of leveraging AI, right? I was like, oh, no, that is not what we like. Leveraging AI isn't the goal, right? But AI can help you meet a goal. So figure out your strategic pillars. So, okay. So one thing that we do to get to the brass tacks, I just wanted to make sure that's really clear. To get to the brass tacks is we can use our O's, R's, and C's and A's to figure out how to integrate AI. So one thing that we do, I'll give you two tips here. So one thing is we were talking about roles. So you define, okay, let's say it's an ed tech app. Okay, so we've got the teacher role, we've got the student role, we've got a parent role, and we've got like a district administrator role. I worked in ed tech for a while. I know that those are the main roles in most ed tech systems. And you can do different things. If I log in as a parent, I can't do the things that a district admin can do. I can't see the different things. One thing you can do to really do some interesting brainstorming with AI is consider AI as a role. So AI as like...
Okay.
As like a thing with an entity within the system, what can AI do to all the objects? So how can AI help? So can AI actually create lesson plans? So let's say lesson plan is an object. So teachers create lesson plans, but can we have AI generated lesson plans? Okay. Can AI do some moderation? So we have a student object and maybe students can see each other and we need to do some moderation. Can AI play a moderator role within the student object? Can AI flag students for review? Maybe if a student is really struggling, and you could even see like in the middle of the lesson, it can flag a student is struggling. So that is something that AI would do to the student is create like a struggling flag that could bubble up to the teacher. So amazing brainstorming here. If you were thinking about it object by object and what can it potentially an AI do to these different objects. Really, really cool. And you might even have multiple AI roles. You might have a customer service AI role, while you might have a generative AI role. You might have a different AI role.
Like AI agents, pretty much.
AI agents. Exactly. They are roles within your system that can do things to objects and have permissions. So integrating them as a role is super helpful to really brainstorm how AI can support your strategic initiatives, not become a strategic initiative. And then another thing to think about is this source of your different attributes. So when we get into requirements and we break down all our attributes, we also think about where does the value of these attributes come from? Okay, so if it's a lesson, within this EdTech app, we got a title, we got a description, we've got the questions that we ask in the lesson, we've got the images associated with it, we've got the star rating on the lesson based on student reviews or something like that. So it's got structure to it. I can look at all those attributes and I can say, okay, so a human is currently creating the value for this attribute, right? Let's say lesson description. Is that something that a human needs to do, or can AI actually help with that? So can the teacher do what they do best, which is creating all the questions, which is actually creating the curriculum around the lesson? And then the AI comes and is like, oh, now I can build you a really nice, like, summarized description of this. And I can even give you some title options too. These would be some really great titles for your curriculum. Like, I would attach that to the title attribute and the description attribute that AI might provide, suggestive prompts or something like that.
Yeah, because AI is, it's working with thanks to prompts, and it's very important to think of that matter. Okay, AI needs to be triggered to do something. I mean, it's not like he has his whole decision. Okay, I'm gonna do something just because I want to. At least for now. At least for now.
Not with agentic AI. It's already happening. It's just go and set it and forget it. It'll just check it for you.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen. It's totally gonna happen, and we're gonna have all sorts of growing pains with it. It's not gonna be boring. It's not gonna be boring.
For sure. Okay, so what are the top reasons UX projects go off track? So how does OUX create a shared language between, designers, engineers, PMs? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, just getting that labeling correct, like that way we talked about, like just having a shared understanding of what we call these things, and having a deeper, like, granularity in what we call these things. So as a layman, we might, so we talk about something we call tree systems within the OUX world. It's very nerdy. But as a layman, I might say, oh, it's just a lesson. There's just a lesson. But structurally, there is a lesson. There is a student's version of that lesson, which has a score on it. Then there's like the classroom version of the lesson that has the due date on it. Then there's the lesson template that is in some sort of library that can be used across the district, right? And these are all lessons, but they are actually 3 different objects in the system that are tightly interwound with each other. So getting really clear on that and being like, oh, these are actually 3 different things, and we need really clear names on these. So when I'm talking about the lesson template, even though colloquially a user might call it all lesson, right? They are actually structurally different things. They're different things in the system. So going pro with what you call things is a big thing. Like, it's okay for laymen to do that, but like, we're professionals designing complex software, right? Like, let's get really clear names on what these entities are so that we can have a productive conversation with each other and how they connect to each other. So getting that clear is absolutely amazing. So getting on that shared language for sure. But to answer your question on what things go wrong, I mean, there's so many things, but I think one of the most frustrating things for user experience designers is likely the scope changes. And like, what are we actually designing here, right? Like, what is in scope? What is out of scope? What are we actually working on? Getting that clear understanding on what the boundaries are within a system. And what OOUX does for you is it does 2 things at once, which feel contradictory. It helps you think really broadly about what is outside of scope, but lets you go down the rabbit holes that are relevant, right? Because we could get really, like, I say often that I attract what people who are accused of being overthinkers, but they're just deep thinkers that don't have a good process. So their deep thinking goes in all the different directions. So OOUX is like, okay, let me give a structure to my deep thinking to channel that deep thinking, which becomes then so much more powerful when we can channel our deep thinking correctly. If our deep thinking is going in all the directions, it's like a river with no banks. It is just a flood or a swamp or something. We want to have like clear direction to help channel our deep thinking so that we can be so much more powerful with that. So being able to say, okay, the parent role is not in scope right now, but I'm going to keep an eye on it because I know it's going to be in scope next year, right? Or the lesson template object is not in scope. We don't have this like shared library, but like, I really think it's coming, and I'm looking at the research and I think it's going to be really great. So I know it's not in scope right now, but I know it's part of the overarching domain. I know it's going to probably be coming. Or another object, like going with the EdTech example, like maybe tests. Maybe tests are never going to be in scope. Like standardized testing is not in scope for us. It's not what we're doing, but I know it's in the domain. And I kind of want to get the user's understanding about tests. Like, how do you think about tests in relation to all these lessons that you're creating? Because it still might help me change the structure of the lesson based on my understanding of your understanding, teacher, right? Like how a teacher thinks about tests and lessons and the connection. So it helps me think broadly and see how what is in scope fits within a wider domain. So there's a quote by architect Elil Saarinen. I'm going to butcher it right now, but it's basically like, when you're designing a chair, think about the house. And then when you're designing the house, think about the neighborhood. And when you're designing the neighborhood, think about the city. Like, you always kind of want to be one level up while still keeping within your boundaries of scope.
Yeah.
So I think OOUX is like the answer in my book for... But I kind of see the world through this lens. But it seems to help a lot. It helps for me. Those scope conversations go so much smoother when we're talking about objects and roles and what's in scope and what's not in scope by the O's, the R's, the C's, and the A's.
Okay, but still, for a designer who is, let's say, a bit more junior, he has just learned OOUX, let's say, and he wants to prove the business of the efficiency of it. So can you give like a quick tip of how he can manage that? Just because it's not that easy when something is unclear to the business. What exactly do I have to do here in that situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. And if this was like 6 years ago, I would say, host a lunch and learn and explain every little detail to them and tell them exactly how it's and why it's awesome and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and basically present it to them. Nope, don't do that. What has been proven much more effective, and I've learned this, the OUX community has taught me this, because I used to just shove it down people's throats because I was so excited about it. And that's what will happen a lot if you come to this world and you start learning OUX. You could get very, very excited about it. People are like, oh my gosh, this is the missing piece. This is the glue, which is wonderful. And then you want to evangelize to everybody, or on the flip side, you don't feel like you know it enough. So you haven't taken the master class. You haven't gotten certified. You don't have the blah, 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 blah. So you're like, I don't know, I'm going to do it wrong. So don't do that either. Prove it. My advice is prove it to yourself first. Quiet OUXing. You do not need permission. No, but you don't need any permission to use this. All right. This is a tool for understanding. This is a tool for asking really great questions. So if you are using it just from, my podcast, the free stuff out there's a lot to learn. You can take it all in and just use it to start asking better questions and prove it to yourself that this works first, okay? Instead of like getting excited about it and expecting everybody to come on board with you. No. You go do it on your own, okay? Prove it to yourself and do what we call quiet OUXing. Then what's gonna happen is people will notice. It might take a while, but what you can do is in your Zoom background or in your cubicle or whatever, you have your object map just floating there, and wait for people to start asking you. So start showing them the diagrams. Oh, I was doing this. I'm just dabbling. Just let me know if you want to hear more about it. Totally casual. So get them to come to you, because if you're using OUX, what's going to happen is you're going to start asking really, really great questions. Your work is going to start looking more informed. You are going to be designing things that are not only elegant but relevant, and elegant, relevant, and what's the other word I'm looking for? Technically feasible too. So because you're asking all these questions, so your designs are just going to be so much more aligned. They're going to be aligned with the business. They're going to be aligned with the tech. They're going to be aligned with the user, and people will notice. All right, they will start saying, "How are you coming up with all of these good questions?" And you can say, there's just this little thing called object mapping that I've been doing. If you wanted a little 30 minutes, we can go get coffee and I can show you more about it, but keep it casual.
Okay. Now I want to step into our concluding questions. And one of them is, what do you think is the current state of UX today? So with AI pushing so many boundaries, do you see the demand for UX professionals growing? And what's your forecast for the future?
AI is really weird. It's really, I use AI a lot. It's a little scary.
Scary for sure.
I am really hoping that so I will say that if you are a UI designer and you are focused on UI right now, your job's going to be gone in a year, if that. I really do think that, or you have to be the best cutting edge UI designer that is defining the new trends of UI design. So that is probably going to be, if you're like the top 10%, your job is probably safe. But if you are doing UI production work, AI is going to do that for us. I think it basically already is.
It's pretty close.
It's pretty close. It's pretty close. And as soon as you plug it into a design system and somebody can draw something on a whiteboard and scan it in, and the AI is going to just turn it into a high fidelity prototype, like that's right around the corner. When it comes to understanding behavior, how humans work, how humans are motivated, that's still like AI's kind of good at that too. It's getting really great. But really understanding what people want and how to construct that, I think that is still going to be on the table. But what I do see is we are going to start being designers for AI. So when we have more and more agentic AI going and doing the thing, we will be designing for a system that works well for humans, but it can also work well for AI. And that means, it all comes back to OOUX. That means that you have to have good structured data. Good structured data, you have to have connections. Your APIs have to be perfect so that the robots can flow through all of the pipes, right?
Yeah.
And designing nicely constructed systems that might not even have screens one day, because we're just designing data connections basically between the things that matter to people. So we need to decide what are the things that matter to us. What are the objects that matter in a given domain, and how do they make sense to be connected to us? We need to define that so that the paths that AI will take actually make sense, and the things that they can do and what permissions they have. All of that is still really freaking relevant. So I don't see OOUX going away anytime soon. I see OOUX becoming more and more important because it's creating structured content that is good for a computer to read and a human to read. So that's where I see that going. But I'll also say just the overall state of OOUX, of UX in general, the overall state of UX is pretty dark. I see a lot of things on the internet about people being really kind of cynical, complacent even. Like, okay, like our job, it's really not to represent the user. It's just to compromise and just to like, and even like really kind of saying it's okay if 90% of our work gets thrown out. Like, you just need to expect that. You just need to expect there's going to be a lot of rework, that your designs are going to be completely torn apart because, a stakeholder is going to come in or a developer is going to come in. And I'm here to say that is a major problem. That is if 90% of our work is getting thrown out, or if 50% of your work is getting thrown out or squashed, that means you are running at 50% efficiency.
Oh, yeah.
That means your salary should be cut in half, right? This is why we are losing jobs, is because we need to do something about that. That is an us problem, right? If 50% of our work is getting thrown out because a stakeholder comes in and says it doesn't make sense, that means we didn't ask the right question. That means that for some reason the work that we produced is not relevant, or it's not technically feasible, or it doesn't make sense for the business because we weren't asking the right questions. So we've got to ask those questions sooner on, so that the work that we do produce, we are basically more efficient.
Yeah, it's aligned with the business goal.
Yeah, I'll get off my soapbox now. I feel strongly about it.
You said that OOUX is pretty much the future in many aspects. Well, let's be honest. Even if we're working only for AI, still, we work with objects. Where we can learn more about OOUX, can you give us some good resources and detailed information for the audience to go and explore and just indulge into the OOUX framework?
Yes. I would say start off with going to OOUX.com/levelup. It's like a free 90-minute training. So there's, of course, my podcast, the UX Level Up, is a great place to go just for some free resources. But if you want sort of like a packaged training, that is going to be the UX Level Up. And that will sort of, after you get into that and watch that, then OUX Foundations would be like the first training that I would push you toward. So Pavel, did you do the Udemy course? Is that what you did, or something else?
I started with the
course.
Udemy. Yep. And
Okay.
I found it very, very nice, honestly. It was because it was fast. It was, the foundations, but honestly, the foundations were pretty decent. I mean, I could do a lot of a lot of work with it. So yeah, I did Udemy.
Yes. So Foundations is the upgrade of the Udemy course. So the Udemy course is not available anymore on Udemy. You're grandfathered in right now. So we've upgraded it and moved it to our own platform. So that's OUX Foundations, but it's the same content. It's just upgraded, and there's a couple extra things in there. Okay. So that would be the next step to really see, like, okay, is this something that I want to, like, start using and start playing around with. And then once you start getting some practice with it, and you start applying it to more and more complex things, you might start hitting a wall. You might start being like, ooh, like, well, what do I do here? And is this an object? Is this not an object? Then that would be the OUX masterclass to go to next, and maybe even certification. So we run our certification every fall. We are in week 3 now of cohort 11. So the next certification would be fall of 2026 for you. And I hope to see some folks there from your audience.
Well, I don't know if you have this data somewhere to see from which location people are joining, but if you see some people from Bulgaria, you probably will know from where it's coming.
Yes. Well, I have done 3 workshops now in Bulgaria at UX Sophia. So I've got lots of UX designer friends. So shout out to all the UX designers in Bulgaria. Had some really good times in Sofia, and hope to be back soon. So I would love to go back and do some more hiking, and it's just such a beautiful country. Love it there.
Thank you so much for that. And honestly, if you're once again here in Bulgaria, you can always drop a message. I would be more than happy to get to know in person. It would be amazing.
Yes, definitely. So maybe it'll be a future UX Sofia or some other event. Nice. Love to come back. So if anybody listening organizes a conference, come on. Let me know. I want to go back to Bulgaria.
You know who to contact, so go ahead and do so. Awesome. Yes. We are wrapping up with my very final question. Once again, it's a bit of a transition. So what question would you like to ask my next guest? So here, one thing that I want to just flag is that my next guest will be for season 2, just because this is the final episode for season 1. Okay. Okay. Do you have anything in mind that you would like to hear from somebody? That will be my next guest.
Yeah, I think I'm going to ask a really nerdy question, which is
it doesn't matter. It's all good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna ask the question that I'm most curious about for other people that are doing user experience design. It's a question that you asked me, but I'm gonna pass it on. Is how do you deal with insane amounts of complexity? How do you process complexity and make sense out of it so that you can turn it into information architecture or structure?
Okay, that's a very nice question.
Nerdy question.
Well, no. Why should be? Everybody has a different way of doing stuff, so I think everybody can answer it differently, which is always enriching. So yeah.
Well, the AI question is the cool kids question.
Yeah.
But I just want to know how do you turn, like, I'm very genuinely curious because, again, like, I've been doing this for 10 years. Like, how do people working in complex situations actually, how do you do that? Like, how do you do it without OUX? That's what I want to know. When things are really complicated, tons of business rules, tons of different stakeholders, how do you pull this all together to turn it into something that makes sense?
Yeah, well, it's not easy. What I can tell you, just because after learning OUX, it became easier for me, for sure. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. It was such a valuable episode for me. There are so many great insights, so I'm very happy that we had this conversation. As I said, you're a very inspirational person, and I hope that soon you can be once again here in Bulgaria. Why not? Once again, everybody who is from Bulgaria, who is organizing those UX events, you know how to deal with that. So be brave and reach Sophia. She's super responsive and super happy that we had this episode with you. So thank you so much once again, Sophia. You're amazing, and wishing you a great rest of the day. So that was our special episode with Sophia Prater. I really hope you enjoyed it, and also I really hope that you enjoyed the whole season. As I told you, each season we're gonna have such special episodes, so you should be looking forward to the next guests. What I can tell you also is not to forget to subscribe. Also, if you want, you can support us. You know the channels. If not, look into the description. And finally, we're coming back next year in January. Till then, you have plenty of time to watch all of the other episodes. And I hope you stay inspired. I hope you enjoy what you're seeing. And that would be it. Thank you. Bye for now.